I never thought a snowplow would become my weapon of choice against tyranny. But here I am, sitting in my living room watching 3 entitled board members storm across my freshly cleared driveway, while their own properties remain buried under 2 feet of Minnesota snow. My name is Ethan Barrett, and I have lived in Pinewood Heights, Minnesota for exactly 8 months. When my wife Laura and I moved here from Chicago last spring, the neighborhood seemed perfect. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, friendly neighbors waving from their porches. The real estate agent glossed over the homeowner association details, as they all do, and I signed the papers without reading every single line of the covenants. That was my first mistake. The HOA president, Patricia Henderson, showed up at our door 3 days after we moved in. She was exactly what you would picture when someone says, HOA president. Mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde hair with that speak-to-your-manager cut, designer athleisure where that probably cost more than my first car, and a clipboard. Always with the clipboard. "Welcome to Pinewood Heights," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'm Patricia, the HOA president. I wanted to personally deliver your welcome packet and go over a few rules." Laura invited her in because my wife is polite to a fault. We sat in our half-unpacked living room while Patricia went through a list of regulations that seemed to grow longer with each page she flipped. Garbage bins must be placed exactly 3 feet from the curb on Tuesday evenings and removed by 7 a.m. Wednesday. Lawn height could not exceed 2.5 inches. No decorations except during approved holiday periods, and even then, only from a pre-approved list. No vehicles could be parked in driveways overnight except in the garage. "That last one seems odd," I said. "What if I want to wash my truck on a Sunday and leave it out to dry?" Patricia's smile tightened. "The rules exist to maintain property values, Mr. Barrett. I'm sure you understand." I did not understand, but I nodded anyway. The first few months were relatively peaceful. We learned to live with the restrictions, though I found them increasingly absurd. Laura wanted to plant roses by the mailbox, but they were not on the approved plant list. I received a violation notice because I brought my trash bins in at 7:15 instead of 7 o'clock. Apparently, Mrs. Chen from the compliance committee had been watching. Then winter came to Minnesota, and with it, the real problems began. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, so snow was nothing new to me. My father taught me to drive a plow when I was 16, clearing our long driveway and helping neighbors when the storms hit. When Laura and I bought our house in Pinewood Heights, one of my first purchases was a heavy-duty ATV with a plow attachment. Minnesota winters are no joke, and I was not about to be trapped in my house waiting for the city plows. The ATV sat in my garage, waiting for the first big snow. It came in early December, a massive storm system that dumped 18 inches overnight. I woke up at 5 in the morning, fired up the ATV, and cleared our driveway before heading to work. The machine worked beautifully, cutting through the snow like butter. I even cleared the sidewalk in front of our house and the elderly couple next door, the Johnsons, who were both in their 80s. Mr. Johnson came out as I was finishing, bundled in a thick coat. "Thank you, Ethan. You are a lifesaver." "No problem at all," I said. "Stay warm." I went to work feeling pretty good about myself. That feeling lasted until I got home and found a notice taped to my front door. It was from the HOA, of course. The letter informed me that I had violated Section 12.7 of the Community Guidelines by operating heavy machinery before 8 a.m. on a weekday. There was also a violation for creating excessive noise during quiet hours. I crumpled the letter and showed it to Laura. She sighed, recognizing the letterhead immediately. "They cannot be serious." "Apparently they can," I said. What am I supposed to do? Leave our driveway buried? Maybe just wait until after 8, Laura suggested, always the peacekeeper. The next storm hit 2 weeks later, this time on a Saturday. I deliberately waited until 8:30 to start plowing. I cleared our driveway, helped the Johnsons again, and was putting the ATV away when Patricia appeared at the end of my driveway. She was not alone. 2 other women flanked her, both around her age, both with that same pinched expression of permanent disapproval. I recognized one as Mrs. Chen from the trash bin incident. The other was new to me. "Mr. Barrett," Patricia called out, marching up my driveway like a general inspecting troops. "We need to have a conversation." "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. "About your responsibilities to this community," Patricia said. "I am the HOA president, and this is Mrs. Chen, our compliance officer, and Donna Miller, our treasurer. We have been discussing your snow removal equipment." "What about it?" Donna spoke up, her voice sharp. "You have a snow plow, a very effective one from what we have observed." "Thanks," I said, not sure where this was going. "The HOA board has been dealing with complaints about snow removal service," Patricia continued. "The company we contract with has been unreliable this season. Multiple board members, including myself, have had to wait days for our driveways to be cleared." "That sounds frustrating," I said neutrally. "It is," Patricia agreed. "Which is why we have come up with a solution. You will clear the driveways of all HOA board members before clearing your own." I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "Excuse me." "It is only fair," Mrs. Chen chimed in. "The board members dedicate countless hours to maintaining this community. The least you can do is ensure we can get to our vehicles promptly after a snowstorm." "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You want me to use my personal equipment, my gas, and my time to clear your driveways first before I clear my own?" "Exactly," Patricia said, as if I had just agreed to something reasonable. "I live at 42 Maple Drive. Mrs. Chen is at 18 Oak Street. Donna is at 36 Birch Lane. And we should include the other 2 board members as well. That is 5 driveways total. Should not take you more than 2 hours." "And if I refuse?" I asked. Patricia's expression hardened. "Then we will have to escalate this to a formal complaint." "You are in violation of multiple community standards, Mr. Barrett. Your ATV is technically classified as a commercial vehicle, which requires special parking permits. The noise it generates exceeds our sound ordinance levels. And you are running what could be considered a business operation without proper authorization, since you are performing snow removal services." "I am helping my neighbor," I said, gesturing toward the Johnsons' house. "That is not a business." "That is for the board to determine," Patricia said. "We meet next Tuesday. I suggest you think carefully about your decision. This could result in significant fines, possibly even a lien on your property." They walked away, leaving me standing in my driveway, stunned and furious. Laura had been watching from the window. She came out, wrapping her coat tight against the cold. "Did they really just demand you plow their driveways for free?" she asked. "They did." "That is insane." "It is Patricia Henderson," I said. "I am starting to think insane is her baseline." That evening I did what any rational person would do. I researched. I pulled out our HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions, all 87 pages of them, and I read every single word. Laura made coffee and sat with me, highlighting relevant sections. The good news was that nowhere in the covenants did it say I had to provide free snow removal services to board members. The bad news was that the document was vaguely worded enough in several places that a determined board could potentially interpret things in their favor. They could make my life difficult with violation notices and fines, even if those violations were questionable. They are bullies, Laura said. Just bullies with clipboards and too much time on their hands. Bullies respond to one thing, I said, standing up to them. What are you going to do? I am going to follow the covenants exactly as written, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. The following Tuesday, I attended my first HOA board meeting. It was held in Patricia's house, a massive colonial that probably cost 3 times what ours did. About 15 homeowners were scattered around her living room, most looking as thrilled to be there as I felt. Patricia called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. Yes, she had an actual gavel. The first 30 minutes covered routine business. Approval of last month's minutes, discussion of the landscaping contract for next spring, a debate about whether the community pool should open Memorial Day weekend or the first week of June. Then, Patricia moved to new business, and her eyes found mine across the room. We have an ongoing issue with unauthorized commercial activity, she announced. Mr. Barrett has been operating snow removal equipment without proper authorization and has refused to prioritize the needs of board members who serve this community. Several heads turned toward me. I raised my hand. I would like to respond to that, I said. Patricia looked annoyed but nodded. Fine. I stood up, pulling out my phone where I had bookmarked the relevant sections. I have read our covenants thoroughly. Section 12.7 prohibits commercial activity, which is defined as any business operation conducted for profit or compensation. I am not charging anyone for snow removal. I am clearing my own property and occasionally helping an elderly neighbor. That is not a commercial activity. You are operating heavy machinery, Mrs. Chen interrupted. An ATV with a plow attachment is not heavy machinery by any legal definition, I countered. It weighs less than some riding lawn mowers, which are explicitly permitted in Section 14.3 for property maintenance. The noise violation stands, Patricia said. Section 12.7 subsection B states that property maintenance activities are exempt from quiet hours when necessary for safety, I said. Clearing a driveway after a snowstorm is a safety issue. I need to get to work. Emergency vehicles need access. The exemption applies. Patricia's jaw tightened. Regardless, as community leaders, board members should receive priority service for essential activities. Show me where it says that in the covenants, I said calmly. I will wait. The room was silent. A few homeowners were clearly trying not to smile. Patricia looked like she wanted to throw her gavel at my head. This board has the authority to interpret the covenants as needed for community welfare, she said. Actually, according to Section 3.1, the board's authority is limited to enforcement of existing rules, not creation of new obligations not specified in the original covenants, I said. You cannot require me to provide free labor just because you think you deserve it. How dare you, Donna said, standing up. We volunteer our time to make this community better. And I appreciate that, I said, keeping my voice level. But volunteering for the board does not entitle you to free services from other homeowners. If you want your driveways plowed, hire a service like everyone else. The meeting deteriorated from there. Patricia tried to table the discussion, but other homeowners started asking questions. Why was the HOA's snow removal contract so expensive if it was not reliable? Why were board members exempt from certain fees that other homeowners had to pay? Could the board really create new requirements not in the original covenants? Patricia adjourned the meeting early, her face flushed with anger. As people filed out, several homeowners stopped to shake my hand or pat me on the back. An older man named George, who lived 3 houses down, grinned at me. That was the most entertainment I have had at one of these meetings in 10 years, he said. Patricia looked like she was going to explode. "I just want to be left alone," I said. "Clear my driveway, go to work, come home." "Good luck with that," George said. "Patricia does not forget or forgive." He was right. Over the next few weeks, I received 5 violation notices. My house number was supposedly 1 inch too small according to community standards. There were weeds in my lawn, though it was December, and everything was covered in snow. My garbage bin was placed 3 feet and 2 inches from the curb instead of exactly 3 feet. Each violation came with a $50 fine. I fought every single one, submitting formal appeals with photographic evidence and measurements. The appeals process was laid out in the covenants, and I followed it precisely. Every appeal I filed required a response from the board within 14 days. Every response they sent, I picked apart for inconsistencies and overreach. Laura thought I was becoming obsessed. She was probably right, but I could not let it go. This was about more than snow removal. It was about a petty tyrant who thought she owned the neighborhood and everyone in it. "You are spending hours every night on this," Laura said one evening in late January. "Is it really worth it?" "Yes," I said, "because if I back down, Patricia wins. And then what? She decides I need to mow her lawn too, trim her hedges. Where does it end?" Laura sighed but did not argue further. She knew me well enough to recognize when I had dug in. The next big storm was forecast for the second week of February. The Weather Service was calling it a potential blizzard, with 2 feet of snow and high winds. The storm was supposed to hit overnight on a Thursday, continuing into Friday morning. Wednesday evening, I received an email from Patricia. It was sent to all homeowners but was clearly directed at me. "The HOA board would like to remind all residents that snow removal is an essential safety service," the email read. "Residents with snow removal equipment are encouraged to prioritize the needs of elderly residents and board members who may need to travel for emergency purposes. Failure to assist neighbors in need may be considered a violation of our Community Spirit Covenant." Community Spirit Covenant. I had to hand it to Patricia. She was creative in her tyranny. I showed the email to Laura. "There is no such thing as a Community Spirit Covenant." "I know," she said. "What are you going to do?" "Exactly what she asked," I said. "I am going to prioritize the needs of elderly residents." The storm hit as predicted, dumping snow throughout the night. I barely slept, listening to the wind howl outside. By 5 a.m. Friday, the snow had stopped. I got up, made coffee, and looked outside. The world was white. My truck in the driveway was a vague lump under the snow. The street was invisible. I bundled up, fired up the ATV, and got to work. First, I cleared my own driveway, making neat passes back and forth until I could see asphalt again. Then I cleared the Johnsons' driveway next door. Mr. Johnson came out and waved his thanks. Then I cleared George's driveway 3 houses down. He was 72, definitely qualified as elderly. I cleared Mrs. Murphy's driveway across the street. She was 85 and lived alone. I spent 3 hours that morning clearing driveways for every elderly resident I could identify in our neighborhood. By the time I was done, I had helped 9 different households. The ATV was running perfectly. I still had plenty of gas, and I felt pretty good about myself. Then I drove past Patricia's house on Maple Drive. Her driveway was completely buried, 2 feet of snow with drifts higher than that against her garage door. Her luxury SUV was barely visible in front. I kept driving. I passed Mrs. Chen's house on Oak Street, also buried. Donna Miller's house on Birch Lane, buried. I went home, parked the ATV in the garage, and went inside to take a hot shower. Laura was making breakfast. "Did you plow the board members' driveways?" she asked. "Nope." She turned, spatula in hand. "Ethan." I prioritized elderly residents exactly as requested. I said. Patricia is 54. Mrs. Chen is 58. Donna is 52. None of them qualify as elderly, and they certainly did not contact me about any emergency travel needs. Laura tried to look disapproving but could not quite manage it. This is going to make things worse. Probably, I agreed, but I will sleep well tonight. I made it until noon before my phone started ringing. Patricia's number showed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. A third time, I finally answered. Yes, Patricia. Where is your equipment? She demanded. My driveway is completely blocked. I spent the morning clearing driveways for elderly residents as your email suggested, I said. I am done for today. I am the HOA president. I need to get to an important meeting. I suggest calling a snow removal service, I said. Or perhaps you could shovel by hand. The exercise would be good for you. This is unacceptable. You have snow removal equipment sitting in your garage while board members are trapped in their homes. My equipment, I emphasized. My gas, my time, all of which I donated to help actual elderly residents this morning. I will have you fined for this. For what exactly? I asked. Not providing free labor to entitled board members. Good luck with that. She hung up on me. 5 minutes later, Mrs. Chen called. I did not answer. Donna called. Also ignored. My email inbox started filling up with increasingly angry messages from all three of them. By evening, the situation had escalated to absurd levels. Patricia had apparently sent out an emergency email to all homeowners, calling an urgent special meeting for Saturday morning to address willful neglect of community responsibilities. Laura read the email and shook her head. She is really doubling down on this. Let her, I said. I have not violated a single rule. Saturday morning, I showed up at Patricia's house for the special meeting. I had to walk part of the way because her street still had not been plowed properly. Someone had cleared a narrow path in her driveway, probably a service she finally called, but it was poorly done with snow piled haphazardly on either side. The meeting room was packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood about the conflict, and people were curious. I spotted George and the Johnsons and several other residents I had helped. They nodded at me. Patricia called the meeting to order, her face tight with barely controlled anger. We are here to address a serious breach of community trust, she began. Mr. Barrett deliberately and maliciously refused to provide assistance to board members during a significant snow emergency while providing that same assistance to others. I provided assistance to elderly residents as your email requested, I said calmly. The email clearly stated board members as well, Patricia snapped. Actually, it said to prioritize elderly residents and board members who may need emergency travel, I said. None of you contacted me about emergency travel, and none of you are elderly. We should not have to beg for basic assistance, Donna said. Then pay for it like everyone else, I replied. Hire a service, buy your own plow, but do not demand free labor from me because you think being on the HOA board makes you special. Mr. Johnson stood up, surprising everyone. I would like to say something, he said in his quiet voice. Ethan Barrett is a good neighbor. He has cleared my driveway after every storm this winter without being asked. He refuses payment. He checks on my wife and me to make sure we are okay. That is what being a good neighbor means. Not demanding special treatment because you volunteered for a position that gives you a tiny bit of authority. Several people applauded. Patricia looked shocked. George stood up next. I have lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I have watched this HOA board become increasingly authoritarian and self-serving. We pay our dues. We follow the rules. But every year there are more rules, higher fees, and more demands. Maybe instead of harassing homeowners who actually help their neighbors, the board should focus on why we are paying premium prices for snow removal services that leave half the neighborhood buried for days. More applause. Patricia was losing control of the meeting, and she knew it. "This is out of order," she said, banging her gavel. "We are here to discuss Mr. Barrett's violations." "What violations?" someone called out. "You cannot force him to plow your driveway." "He has been cited for multiple infractions," Mrs. Chen said, pulling out her tablet. "Improper house numbers, lawn violations, trash bin placement. All of which I have formally appealed with supporting evidence," I said, "and all of which are retaliatory actions because I would not bend to your demands." "That is a serious accusation," Patricia said coldly. "It is the truth," I said. "I received more violation notices in 6 weeks than most homeowners receive in years. Every single one came after I refused to plow your driveways for free. That is textbook retaliation, and it is actually illegal under Minnesota HOA statutes." That got everyone's attention. Patricia's face went pale. "Minnesota Statute Section 515B.3-018, I continued, reading from my phone. "An HOA board member may not use their position to retaliate against a homeowner for exercising their rights under the association's governing documents. Penalties include removal from the board, fines, and potential legal action." The room erupted in conversation. Patricia tried to restore order, but no one was listening to her anymore. Homeowners were asking questions, sharing their own stories of questionable fines and overreaching board actions. The meeting dissolved into chaos. I left after about an hour, satisfied that I had made my point. Laura was waiting at home, anxious to hear what happened. "Did she back down?" Laura asked. "Not exactly," I said. "But other homeowners are starting to push back. That is what matters." Over the next week, things got interesting. Patricia attempted to schedule another board meeting to address false accusations, but 3 board members refused to attend. Apparently, Mrs. Chen and Donna were not happy about being publicly called out. They blamed Patricia for pushing the snow removal issue too hard. Then I received a certified letter, not from the HOA, but from a law firm representing Patricia personally. She was threatening to sue me for defamation based on my statements at the meeting about retaliation. I took the letter to a lawyer. His name was Michael Ross, a local attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. He read the letter, laughed, and tossed it on his desk. "This is nonsense," he said. "You stated facts about violation notices and cited actual statutes. That is not defamation. This is just intimidation." "Can she actually sue me?" I asked. "Anyone can sue anyone for anything," Michael said. "But she would lose badly. And frankly, based on what you have told me, you might have grounds for a countersuit: harassment, abuse of authority, selective enforcement of rules." "I do not want to sue anyone," I said. "I just want to live in my house and be left alone." "Then let me send a response letter," Michael said. "Something that makes clear you will not be bullied and that further harassment will result in legal action on your part." I agreed. Michael drafted a letter that was professional but firm, outlining the timeline of events, the retaliatory violation notices, and the attempts to compel free services. He sent it to both Patricia's attorney and to the HOA board as a whole. The response was swift. Within 3 days, I received a letter from the board stating that all pending violation notices against me had been administratively dismissed. No explanation, just a simple statement that the matters were closed. Laura was relieved. Maybe it is finally over. I was not so sure. Patricia did not strike me as someone who gave up easily. The 3rd week of February brought another storm, not as big as the last one, but enough to require plowing. I cleared my driveway and helped the elderly residents as before. I did not touch any board member's property. This time, there was no angry phone call, no threatening email, just silence from Patricia's camp. But I noticed something else. Other homeowners were starting to help each other without waiting for the HOA's contracted service. The guy 2 doors down had a snow blower and cleared 3 driveways on his street. A group of teenagers was going around offering to shovel for elderly residents. The neighborhood was pulling together, and it had nothing to do with the HOA board. George stopped by one evening with a 6-pack of beer. We sat in my living room while Laura made dinner. "You started something," George said. "People are talking. There is a petition going around to recall the board and hold new elections." "Really?" I was surprised. I had just been defending my own boundaries, not trying to start a revolution. "Patricia has been president for 6 years," George said. "People have been unhappy for a while, but no one wanted to deal with the hassle of opposing her. You showed everyone that she can be stood up to, that her authority is not absolute." "I just did not want to plow her driveway for free," I said. "Sometimes that is all it takes," George said. One person saying no. The recall petition gained traction quickly. Minnesota HOA law requires 30% of homeowners to sign a recall petition to trigger a special election. Our neighborhood had 87 homes. The petition needed 26 signatures. It had 43 within a week. Patricia fought it, of course. She sent emails claiming the recall was based on personal vendettas and would harm property values. She argued the current board had years of experience that should not be thrown away. She even implied that I was somehow manipulating people, which was ridiculous since I had nothing to do with organizing the petition. The special election was scheduled for mid-March. Any homeowner in good standing could run for the board. 5 positions were up for election: president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and compliance officer. I had no intention of running. I had made that clear to everyone who asked. But Laura surprised me one evening by suggesting I reconsider. "Why would I do that?" I asked. "I do not want more HOA drama in my life. Because if you do not, someone like Patricia will just take over again eventually," Laura said. "You have shown you understand the rules and are willing to stand up to abuse of authority. The neighborhood needs that. I am not a politician." "You do not have to be," Laura said. "Just be yourself. Fair, reasonable, willing to tell entitled people no." I thought about it for several days. Finally, I agreed to run for president, though I felt ridiculous doing it. George agreed to run for vice president. Mrs. Murphy, the 85-year-old I had been helping with snow removal, convinced her daughter Amanda to run for treasurer. A software engineer named Derek volunteered for secretary. A retired teacher named Susan ran for compliance officer. Patricia ran for re-election as president. Mrs. Chen ran for compliance officer again. Donna tried to stay on as treasurer. They rounded out their slate with 2 other longtime board allies. The campaign was short and surprisingly intense. Patricia's team sent out flyers warning about inexperienced leadership and radical changes that would destroy the neighborhood. Our group, which we jokingly called the New Pinewood Coalition, sent out our own flyers promising transparency, fair enforcement of rules, and an end to board overreach. We held a community forum at the local library 2 weeks before the election. Both slates were invited to present and answer questions. About 60 homeowners showed up, which was apparently a record. Patricia went first, giving a polished presentation about the board's accomplishments during her tenure. Improved landscaping, better pool maintenance, higher property values. She was good at this, I had to admit. She sounded professional and competent. Then she shifted to attacks. My opponents want to eliminate rules and regulations that protect your property values, she said. They want to turn our beautiful neighborhood into a free-for-all where anyone can do anything. Is that really what you want? When it was my turn, I kept it simple. Nobody wants to eliminate reasonable rules, I said. We want fair enforcement applied equally to everyone. We want a board that serves homeowners, not one that demands homeowners serve the board. We want transparency in finances and decisions. That is it. Nothing radical, just basic fairness. The question and answer session got heated. Someone asked Patricia directly about demanding I plow board members' driveways for free. She tried to deflect, claiming it was a misunderstanding. George stood up and called her out. It was not a misunderstanding, he said. I was there when you confronted Ethan in his driveway. You told him he had to clear board members' driveways first before his own, using his equipment and his time for free. Then when he refused, you hit him with a dozen bogus violation notices. That is not leadership. That is bullying. The room applauded. Patricia's face turned red. I have dedicated years to this community, she said, her voice shaking. And this is how I am treated, with disrespect and accusations. You demanded free labor from a homeowner, Susan said calmly. That is not dedication to the community. That is entitlement. The forum ended badly for Patricia's slate. Even people who had been undecided were clearly swayed by the exchange. Election day was a Saturday in mid-March. Voting was conducted by paper ballot at the community pool building. Homeowners could vote anytime between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Laura and I voted at 10, then spent the day nervously waiting for results. The count was conducted publicly at 6 p.m. with representatives from both slates present. Michael Ross, my attorney, volunteered to be an observer to ensure everything was handled properly. It was not even close. I won the presidency with 62 votes to Patricia's 19. George won vice president. Amanda, Derek, and Susan all won their positions by similar margins. Patricia's entire slate was swept out. When the results were announced, Patricia stood up, her face pale with shock and anger. This is invalid, she said. I demand a recount. Michael spoke up. You are entitled to request a recount under Minnesota statute. However, the margin of victory in all races exceeds the threshold for mandatory recounts. You would need to provide evidence of procedural irregularities. The entire process has been irregular, Patricia said, manipulated by outside interference. Be specific, Michael said. What irregularities? Patricia could not answer. She gathered her things and walked out without another word. Mrs. Chen and Donna followed her. The rest of us stayed to handle the official transition procedures. As the new board, our first order of business was to review the HOA's financial records. What we found was disturbing. Patricia had not been embezzling money exactly, but she had been approving expenses that were questionable at best. The snow removal contract went to a company owned by her brother-in-law at prices well above market rate. The landscaping company was owned by Donna's cousin. Multiple board members had received reimbursements for expenses that were poorly documented or seemed personal in nature. This is not illegal, Amanda said, reviewing the spreadsheets. But it is definitely unethical. They have been funneling HOA money to friends and family for years. Can we prove it? I asked. The contracts and payments are all documented, Amanda said. Whether there was explicit kickback arrangements, I cannot say. But at minimum, they violated their fiduciary duty to get the best value for homeowners. Derek, our new secretary, suggested we release a transparency report to all homeowners showing where HOA funds had been going. It was a good idea. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. We compiled a detailed report showing the questionable contracts, the above-market prices, and the reimbursements to board members that lacked proper documentation. We sent it to all homeowners with a cover letter explaining that we were soliciting new bids for services and implementing stricter financial controls. The response was immediate and angry. Homeowners who had been paying steadily increasing dues were furious to learn the money was being used to benefit board members' friends and family. Several people suggested reporting the old board to the county attorney for investigation. I was hesitant about that. "We do not have proof of criminal activity," I said at our first official board meeting. "Just poor management and conflicts of interest." "They should not get away with it," George said. "They did not get away with it," Susan pointed out. "They lost their positions. We are fixing the problems." Sometimes that is enough. We voted to focus on reform rather than punishment. New vendor contracts with competitive bidding, monthly financial reports available to all homeowners online, board meetings recorded and posted, limits on expense reimbursements with required receipts. We also systematically reviewed every active violation notice and fine. I had suspected the old board had been selectively enforcing rules, and the records proved it. Homeowners who questioned board decisions received multiple violations. Homeowners who stayed quiet were largely left alone. We dismissed dozens of questionable fines and sent apology letters to affected homeowners. The next few months were busy but satisfying. We renegotiated the snow removal contract and saved the HOA 30%. We found a new landscaping company that did better work for less money. We eliminated several unnecessary rules that served no purpose except to generate violation notices. Most importantly, we changed the culture. The HOA board was not an authority to be feared but a service organization working for homeowners. We asked for input before making decisions. We explained our reasoning when we had to enforce rules. We treated people like adults. Patricia essentially disappeared from neighborhood life. She stopped attending meetings, stopped participating in community events. I occasionally saw her leaving her house, and she would look through me like I did not exist. I did not mind. We were both better off with distance between us. Then, in late May, something unexpected happened. I was working in the garage on a Saturday afternoon when a police car pulled up to my house. Two officers got out and approached. My stomach dropped. Had Patricia found some way to cause trouble after all? "Ethan Barrett?" one officer asked. "Yes, that is me." "I am Officer Williams. This is Officer Jackson. We need to ask you some questions about the Pinewood Heights Homeowner Association." "Okay," I said cautiously. "What about it?" "We are investigating allegations of financial fraud and misuse of funds," Officer Williams said. "Your name came up in our investigation. You were recently elected president, correct?" "I was," I said. "Is this about the previous board?" "We cannot discuss details of an ongoing investigation," Officer Jackson said. "But we would like to ask you about financial records and contracts from the past few years." Laura came out, looking worried. I introduced her to the officers and invited them inside. We sat in the living room while they asked questions about what the new board had found when reviewing finances. I explained the questionable contracts, the above-market prices, the payments to companies owned by relatives of board members. I showed them the transparency report we had sent to homeowners. Officer Williams took notes while Officer Jackson photographed documents. "Did you report these findings to any authorities?" Officer Williams asked. "No," I said. "We debated it, but we were not sure if there was criminal activity or just poor management." "Someone else reported it," Officer Jackson said. An anonymous tip came in 3 weeks ago with specific allegations about the former board president Patricia Henderson and vendor kickback arrangements. My eyebrows rose. I do not know who would have done that. The officers asked more questions, then thanked us and left. Laura looked at me with wide eyes. "This is getting serious," she said. "I know," I said. "I wonder who reported it." I found out 2 days later when George came by. We sat on the back deck with beers, watching the sun set. "So the police came to talk to you?" George asked casually. "They did," I said. "Someone filed a report about the old board's financial dealings." "Imagine that," George said, not quite hiding a smile. "George, was it you?" "I might have made a phone call," he admitted. "After we released that transparency report, I did some more digging. I know a guy who works in commercial real estate. He helped me look up the actual ownership of those vendor companies. The connections were even worse than we thought. Patricia's brother-in-law owned the snow removal company, as we knew. But that company was subcontracting most of the actual work to another company for half the price and pocketing the difference. Donna's cousin's landscaping company was billing for services that were never performed. I found invoices for lawn treatments in January when the ground was frozen solid. "That is fraud," I said. "That is definitely fraud," George agreed. "I figured the county attorney should know about it." Over the next few months, the investigation expanded. The police brought in forensic accountants to review the HOA's records. They interviewed former board members, vendors, and homeowners. Subpoenas were issued for bank records and business documents. In August, charges were filed. Patricia Henderson was charged with theft by swindle and fraud. Her brother-in-law was charged with fraud and operating a fraudulent business scheme. Donna Miller was charged as an accessory for knowingly approving fraudulent invoices. Mrs. Chen was not charged, apparently having been unaware of the financial schemes, but her reputation was ruined anyway. The local newspaper covered the story, which was embarrassing for the neighborhood but ultimately cathartic. Seeing the charges in print validated everything we had suspected and reformed. Patricia's trial was scheduled for November. In the meantime, she was out on bail but was no longer allowed to handle finances for any organization per her bail conditions. Her husband filed for divorce, which surprised no one. The stress of criminal charges and public disgrace had apparently been too much for their marriage. I attended part of the trial, morbidly curious to see how it would play out. The prosecution presented a devastating case. Email records showing Patricia and her brother-in-law discussing how to inflate invoices. Bank records showing payments to shell companies. Testimony from the subcontractor who did the actual snow removal work, explaining he was paid half what the HOA was charged, with the difference going to Patricia's brother-in-law, who then kicked back a portion to Patricia through her consulting company that supposedly provided HOA management services. Patricia took the stand in her own defense, which her attorney probably advised against. She tried to claim everything was legitimate business expenses and management fees. The prosecutor shredded her testimony, showing that her supposed consulting company had no other clients, no business license, and had never filed proper tax returns for the income. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was scheduled for December. Patricia faced up to 5 years in prison, though her attorney argued for probation given her lack of prior criminal history. The judge was not sympathetic. "You held a position of trust," the judge said at sentencing. "Homeowners relied on you to manage their collective funds responsibly. Instead, you used your authority to enrich yourself and your family at their expense. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment but a systematic scheme carried out over multiple years." The community deserves better. Patricia was sentenced to 2 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to the HOA in the amount of $73,000, the total calculated loss from the fraudulent schemes. Her brother-in-law received 3 years in prison. Donna Miller received 1 year of jail time and community service for her lesser role. The sentences sent shockwaves through the community and, honestly, through HOA boards across the region. Local news coverage emphasized the criminal consequences of misusing HOA funds. Several neighboring HOAs suddenly started conducting audits and implementing stricter financial controls. For Pinewood Heights, it was a painful but necessary reckoning. The neighborhood had allowed Patricia to operate unchecked for years because no one wanted the hassle of opposing her. It took a relatively small conflict over snow removal to expose the rot underneath. Laura and I talked about it one evening in December, after the sentencing. "Do you regret moving here?" she asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But honestly, it could have been worse. We could have never found out about the fraud. Patricia could have kept going for years." "Because you would not plow her driveway," Laura said, shaking her head. It is almost funny if you think about it. Her entitlement and need for special treatment led directly to her downfall. "Pride before the fall," I said. "If she had just left me alone, treated everyone fairly, not pushed for special privileges, none of this would have happened. The fraud might never have been discovered." "Do you regret fighting back?" "Not for a second," I said. "Standing up to bullies is always worth it." The HOA slowly rebuilt its reputation over the following year. We continued implementing reforms and focusing on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. We organized neighborhood events, improved common areas, and made sure financial reports were clear and accessible. The story of the Pinewood Heights HOA fraud became something of a cautionary tale in local governance circles. I was even invited to speak at a county meeting about HOA oversight, which was surreal. I just talked about the importance of questioning authority, reading your governing documents, and not letting anyone convince you that volunteering for a board position entitles them to special treatment. George served out his term as vice president, then declined to run for re-election, saying he had done his part. Amanda continued as treasurer, bringing much-needed financial expertise to the board. New volunteers stepped up, good people who wanted to serve the community without the power trips. As for me, I served 2 years as president before stepping down. I had accomplished what I set out to do: reform the HOA into something fair and functional. After that, I was happy to return to being a regular homeowner, maintaining my property, helping my elderly neighbors, and living quietly. The snow plow is still in my garage. Every winter, when the first big storm hits, I clear my driveway and then make the rounds to help the Johnsons, George, Mrs. Murphy, and anyone else who needs assistance. No one demands it, no one expects it as their due, and everyone appreciates it. That is how neighbors should treat each other. Sometimes I drive past Patricia's old house. A new family bought it after the divorce and criminal case. They seem nice, a young couple with 2 kids. They wave when they see me. I wave back. I never did plow Patricia's driveway, not once through that whole winter after she demanded it. She eventually had to pay premium emergency rates for service after every storm because the regular companies were booked solid. It probably cost her thousands of dollars over the course of the season. I do not feel bad about it. Actions have consequences. Treating people poorly has consequences. Abusing authority has consequences. Patricia learned that the hard way, but she did eventually learn it. Laura and I still live in Pinewood Heights. It is our home now, genuinely and completely. The neighborhood is not perfect, but it is better. The HOA is not loved, but it is at least respected and functional. People follow rules because they make sense, not because they are afraid of arbitrary enforcement. And every time it snows, I fire up that ATV and clear my driveway first, exactly as I should. Then I help my neighbors, because that is what good neighbors do. Not because anyone demanded it, not because it is in any covenant or regulation, but because it is the right thing to do. That is the difference between community spirit and community tyranny. One comes from genuine care for the people around you. The other comes from entitled people with clipboards who think authority means superiority. I chose community spirit. Patricia chose tyranny. We both got exactly what we deserved. The snow keeps falling every winter in Minnesota. My plow keeps running. My neighbors keep waving their thanks. And somewhere, Patricia Henderson is living in a very different reality than the one she imagined for herself when she first knocked on my door with her clipboard and her demands. I like to think there is a lesson in that for anyone who holds even the smallest amount of power over others. Use it wisely, use it fairly, or eventually it will be taken away. Usually when you least expect it, and often because of something as simple as refusing to plow a driveway for free.